Hello, everybody. Welcome to Friday's LinkedIn Live, Twitter Live, Facebook Live, YouTube, wherever you are catching this. I am Rachel B. Lee, and this is my first live of 2023, Lisa. So I am so happy that you are my lady boss guest. I am so excited. Today, we're going to talk about what does it mean to really find purpose at work. And this is such a relevant topic for me as somebody corporate, the MBA background, to pursue my purpose and to feel meaningful in my work. And that's why I was so attracted to Lisa and her book and her LinkedIn learning instructor, her class, all these things that she's doing. I think she really has a beautiful message. So Lisa, thank you so much for being here today. What I would love to do is first just have you talk a little bit about your background. How did you get to this lady boss that you are today?
Well, it's so good to be here with you. And this topic of purpose, you know how you look back on your life and you see, oh, that was the thing that was driving everything. I realized that for myself. And my life and my work operated in what were two parallel lanes for a long time. My background is very corporate. I'm a former VP of sales. And so it was always really important to me. I always believed that sales was a noble profession. It wasn't slimy, it wasn't swarmy, unless you choose to do it that way. Because organizations, for the most part, provide something that people want or need. Otherwise, you wouldn't stay in business. But the way that you go about bringing that to people, I think, is really important. And so, like I said, I was very corporate, had a business background, was a VP of sales. I had this other lane of my life that was very much a spiritual seeker, someone that wanted meaning. I'm a parent. And so this other lane felt separate. And there was always sort of this push-pull. But what's happened in the last 10 years, and is evidenced in the couple of books I've written, Selling with Noble Purpose and Leading with Noble Purpose, is I've come not only to realize, but there's a lot of research that points to this. So it's not only my own experience, that having a purpose bigger than money makes an organization more successful, which is lane one, financially, and makes people more fulfilled and happier, which is lane two. So those two lanes have come together in my work in the last 10 years.
I love it. I love it. So you kind of look back at your life and you're like, okay, I was on these two different paths.
Yeah.
What happened? When did you decide are the paths merged now
Yeah.
into a more integrated life? What happened that was like, I need to make a change?
It was a little different than that. Where I landed on this understanding and then was able to build out into a methodology and a concept was actually based on a study I did of a sales team where we wanted to assess who were the top performers and why. And so the studies in the book, and a pretty dramatic story happened to me where this is about 12 years ago. One of the we were studying these salespeople, and one of the people talked with great emotion and specificity about one particular patient. They were a biotech company and they sold drugs. And usually sales reps don't interact with the patients. They're calling at the very top level or they're calling on doctors. But she told a story about this one particular patient that had approached her and said, wow, your drug really helped me. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything. Now I can play with my grandkids. And she said, I carry her in my heart every day. That's my purpose. That's why I do my job. And this is 12 years ago. People weren't talking about purpose in business. But what I saw in that moment, I had spent years doing workshops, sales training, leadership development. And I always knew, just both instinctively and overdoing it over time, that there was something that sat underneath all of these, quote, techniques that could be used for the good or could be used for your own self-serving interest. And when she said that, I realized that's the difference. That's the difference, is what is the intent and what is sitting underneath this. And so that's when kind of the what felt like a little bit two lanes of my life, that's when they finally snapped together. And so I did a good bit of research on this, and I'll share three things. One, organizations who have a purpose bigger than money, who truly want to improve life for their customers, outperform the market by over 350%. It's undisputed. Yeah. That is because, point number two, organizations who have a purpose bigger than money are more innovative. So you and I are a company, we sit in a room, we say, how can we make more money? We might come up with some good ideas, but if we sit in a room and say, how can we help our customers more? We're going to be a better company. So it happens financially. It happens because they're more innovative. They get better customer service. They come up with better ideas. And the third piece is individuals who have a purpose bigger than money. And the money matters. So I'm not creating a false dichotomy here, but individuals who show up knowing my work makes a difference, not only outperform people who are just in a transactional relationship with their work, they outperform them from a performance level, but they also experience more happiness and joy in their lives. So it works on the revenue standpoint. It works on the level of creating differentiation for your organization or yourself in the marketplace. And it also works at a deeply personal level.
I feel that. I can see that, you know.
It matches your experience, doesn't it? The second I
matches my
say it.
experience.
Yeah.
So for me, in my journey inside corporate, I had great teams, great managers, great potential, but I felt it was like this feeling in the tummy, Lisa. You know,
Yeah.
It was like this knowing that something, wow, this is great, but something is missing for me. I don't feel
something's calling me. Yeah.
Something, you know, and it took coaching, it took conversations, and it took a big leap of faith with my husband, you know,
to jump out there.
To jump out there. And I would say I'm the, you know, small percentage of people that will take that leap to pursue something more purposeful. When you're, you know, in your book and when you're talking to people, like, how do people start to sort of peel back that onion on finding their purpose? And then what happens when you do?
So I would say you've given two scenarios, and I want to speak to both of them. A lot of people think, especially since I talk about noble purpose, a lot of people think that means you have to be feeding the poor or coaching entrepreneurs or something that is very obvious. And if that's your path, go on you. You already know it in your gut. So go on you.
Yeah.
But I'll speak to a little bit more of that in a second, but I also want to speak to, if you're an accountant working in a large company, unless your company is selling cigarettes to children, your company probably makes something that's really helpful to people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be buying it. And unless you're sitting there every day just moving plates around that don't matter, if you're that accountant, I worked with an accounting firm once, and they said, you know what we help people do? We help people sleep at night. So the first question that I would say is, how does your work make a difference? And it's interesting because people think, oh, my work doesn't matter. I'm an accountant. Oh, my work doesn't matter. I just sell widgets. And I would challenge that. And the answer is, how does it impact others when you do your job well? What if you didn't do your job? And you might be one of just 100 people who does this job. But what we say is there's three questions that everyone should be able to answer about their job. How do you make a difference? How do you do it differently than anyone else? And on your best day, what do you love about your job? And when you say, how do you make a difference? Maybe you are the accountant who helps people sleep at night. Maybe the way you do it differently is maybe you're more accurate. Maybe you're just nicer. Maybe it can be anything. And then what do you love about your job? Think about those moments when people turn to you and go, man, this was really helpful. Or you really saved me. And so the first quest is to look for the purpose in what you're already doing. That old movie, which not surprisingly was my favorite movie, It's a Wonderful Life, where he's like, oh, my life really did matter. We miss that as human beings. And it is so present go to anybody's funeral unless they were a complete asshole. And some people will say nice things about how they made a difference. But that person probably didn't realize that because we don't talk about it. So that's number one. Number two, so look where you already are. Because I think a lot of people leave places, leave companies, leave jobs that they don't need to because the meaning is there. But we were waiting for our boss to show it to us. So that's number one. Number two, to your point, if you look and you go, yes, this does matter, but I want more, be thinking in terms of who do I want to make a difference to? How do I want to have an impact? And that's where you'll find your next play.
Well, that's really powerful, Lisa. I just want to show too and say hi to Brian, who's here from Virginia. Josh is on. We have James, who's here in Austin. How does your work make a difference? Such an important question. So James is here. He's awesome. Thanks for watching. And Dean, also checking out the LinkedIn Live, Noble Purpose, helping others get absolutely. So really cool. I think it's really resonating with people, Lisa. And what's interesting about this, who's the onus on?
Right.
Because when you're working at a company, and I think this is just interesting for me as I've been learning about Gen Z. I'm a millennial, Gen Z, right? We have 5 generations in the workforce right now. And so it's like a really interesting conversation around the workplace. For us, millennials, we've always aspired for this purpose at work. But from what I'm reading about Gen Zs, wants it, but at what cost almost?
At what cost? And that
at what cost? And they're not willing to
give up their life for it.
Give up their life for it. So I'm kind of, in your research and as you're kind of exploring this, what are you seeing in this quest for, a purpose at work between the generations? And whose job is it? Is it the leader or is it my job as the employee?
To find it. So first let's settle on, so there are all these generations and I'm a cusper. So I'm between an X and a boomer. I do not identify with boomers, although my kids go boomer. Anyhow, across all these generations, there is a human truth and it goes back to Aristotle. Once we get beyond food and shelter, human beings want 2 things: belonging and significance. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And we want to know that our contribution matters. This transcends age, race, time. We all want that. Here's the difference. My generation, we thought that if we worked our asses off and we became a partner, a whatever, VP, insert your thing, that then happiness would descend on us. We found out that wasn't true.
True.
But we were willing to trade this sense of purpose for money. And it wasn't because a lot of us are greedy, bad people. Candidly, it's because a lot of us grew up poor and we saw the absence of money creating big problems. And we thought, well, if I just have money, I'll be okay. But then we went and raised a group of children that we looked in the eye and said, you're special. You're going to change the world. You're special. And they believed us. And we weren't wrong. We weren't wrong in that, because they may say, well, maybe I can't invent a polio vaccine, but if I'm going to work here, my work should matter. Where things went sideways was feeling like my boss needs to show that to me. And so when we work with organizations, we work at both lanes. The boss does have a responsibility to describe the meaning and purpose of the work, especially the senior leader, and describe how the work impacts others. And we all have our own responsibility to find that for ourselves, because there's going to be days when your boss is having a bad day. There's going to be days when your boss isn't there. There are going to be days when your CEO has a boot on his or her neck from the shareholders and all they can talk about is money. And those are the days when you, as a human, you need to take responsibility for it. And here's a little secret. The main beneficiary of you crafting that story in your head is you.
Right. Yeah.
So like as a mother,
at the end of the day, it's like I am responsible and accountable for this. And
for this. That
yeah, like
I might
first and
not be
foremost,
responsible for these conditions, but there is one place I can take responsibility. And the thing that we see is when you tether yourself to a purpose bigger than money, there's a recent study from Dr. Valerie Good at Michigan State University, you have more resilience. And it's the difference between a teacher who thinks, my self-esteem is going to rise and fall based on my students' test scores and all these conditions outside his or her control, versus a teacher who says, I'm here to help create informed citizens.
yes.
Because no matter
Yes.
what's gone, COVID, this goes bad. Now, all those things matter. And I'm not suggesting people should have to work in terrible conditions, but in any job, the conditions are not going to be good some days, even in the best of places. And I need to tether myself to something, because the research tells us we use passion and purpose interchangeably. They're not. Passion waxes and wanes. It's personal. Purpose is steadfast. And on the days when you don't have passion, if you have purpose, you'll still be able to show up.
That is good. That's a quotable moment, Lisa. I'm going to take that.
That is research from someone else, and I'm going to remember UCLA School of Medicine. Anyhow, it is really, really important that we understand the difference between passion and purpose.
Yes. Ooh, that is good. I just want to say hi to Jan Smith from Liverpool. Love when we are global. And then we have Regan that was checking this out. Thank you so much for being here. Awesome. So there's conversation around the Gen Xers. My husband's a Zennial, because, a big indication with all the generations, right, is analog versus digital. Were you born with in digital or not? So I love this topic in the context too of like, what's going on right now, Lisa? Like of course I'm now on my own. I get to control my destiny and my income, but many of my friends work for people and some are getting laid off. These are MBAs. These are super amazing, badass people, right? They're getting laid off. So they're in this, and we're hearing, the news doesn't help. 10,000 jobs left by Microsoft, 12,000 jobs from Google, right? Like you're just in this, we're in that cycle. And I think, yes, which we've been in that for a few years. So, but like what you've kind of experienced, right? Let's say 2020, now we're in 2023 in this context of purpose at work. It feels like it's changed quite a bit. And now it's changing again because, it's kind of like F purpose. I need a job. I need to pay the bills.
Yeah. Right. And it's
right. So, and that's real. So like, what are you hearing and feeling around that right now with people?
So there's a couple things we need to know. So to level set this, if you are feeling financial anxiety right now, I feel you. My husband and I lost a business during the 2009 recession, and I was in a spot where I had no money. I owed 6 figures to the IRS, and I had college tuition coming due in 6 months. So I feel you. And the need for money is real. Okay, so I get that. And what happens when you need money, you start to get afraid and your lizard brain ignites. And whether it's I'm about to go broke or whether it's I need to close this sale, we are not at our best selves when we're afraid. Right. So what purpose can do is it doesn't mean that you have to forget about money and go feed the poor. If that's your aim, like somebody needs to do it, so you go on. But what purpose can do is it can give you a sense of self that makes you less susceptible to the conditions around you. So one of the things I knew when we went through this bankruptcy is I knew I had some skills and I knew I can help people be more effective selling, which in that environment was really, really important because people needed to make money. I can help people sell. I can help them do it with dignity. I can help them do it in a way that they're going to be proud of. I'm good at that. I need to lean into that. And whether that meant I took a job or I created my own thing, wherever that led me, that sense of I can make a difference to people and leaning into that. So that's number one. The second thing we need to understand that has happened is, and in America, the last time this collectively happened was World War II. And when I say collectively, that was the last time when something happened to everyone all at once that caused a great psychological shift. And one of the reasons people romanticize World War II so much is everybody was on the same page and had a sense of purpose. That's why people romanticize it so much. Now, two really important things happened in World War II that people don't connect to World War II. World War II was the seeds of the women's movement and the civil rights movement. Because in World War II, women went into factories and built a bomber, and they looked at each other and went, we're pretty damn smart. And they couldn't unknow that. Men of color went and served with white men and said, this is our country too. And we put our lives on the line for it. And they couldn't unknow that. Did they come back and everything changed overnight? Hardly. But what it did was it seeded a knowledge they couldn't unknow. And their children were the ones that really made those movements take off because their parents had this new knowledge. So what's happened now? What's happened now, collectively all at once, is everybody went home and there was no pool table, free lattes, jovial coworker. Everything got stripped away and people had the chance to think, who am I and why does my life matter? And I'm not going to show up every day as a cog in a money machine for somebody else. And they can't unknow it. So now, if I just got laid off for Microsoft, I might go back to work for some place like Microsoft. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm sitting here using technology right now that Microsoft created that enabled this. So that's not to say that those people have to go devote their lives selflessly to serving others. But what it does say is, I need a job that means something. I need to combine the money and the meaning, and I can't unknow that. And this younger generation who watch their parents sacrifice everything to get laid off sometimes says, I'm not going to give up my whole life in the hopes of one day I have financial security. And so it's not a bad place for them to be. It's just like my grandmother's generation said, I'm not going to work in a hat factory that's unsafe 80 hours a week. This isn't fair.
Right.
And then the working conditions change. And that's what's happening now is we're always evolving towards that better version. Yes, there's corporate greed. Yes, there's all these things that are happening. But if you look at the working conditions that people have now versus working in the hat factory where a fire is going to, make a bunch of 14-year-olds perish, the arc of humanity does bend towards justice. Not to overreach here, but it does.
Right. I mean, it's a really powerful perspective, Lisa, that you're offering here, right? The collective feeling that we've all experienced, the fact that we're not going back.
You can't unknow it.
We can't unknow it. And so now it's kind of like okay, so what? And all of us, especially organizations, are really figuring out, this new norm.
And the thing I think we need to grant some grace to when you talk about people need money, you've got a generation of organizational leaders who were raised on the Milton Friedman shareholder primacy model. And they had a boot on their neck that said success is money. And they weren't bad people. Some of them eventually turned into bad people, but most of them weren't bad people. Humans are complex. It's easy to say money doesn't matter until you've been broke. I've been broke. Money matters. It matters a lot. But we have this generation of leaders. And I say generation, I'm talking about anybody that went to school from the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, that were taught it's all about money. It's all about process. And now we're saying, oh no, human emotion matters. Feelings matter. And so the way to think about it is not we need to make a shift, but this is additive. This is added on, and the fact that a lot of our senior leaders aren't good at this yet, the operative word being yet,
Right.
isn't because they're bad people. It's because they weren't brought up this way. And so that's what we're doing, is we're adding on another layer saying we want meaning in work. In most cases, it's already there. We just need to bring it front and center.
So we're coming to the end here, and just kind of going off of that topic, it's actually really compelling for me, right? Because Josh and I lead a company. We have team
Right.
members, and just we're learning a lot about that. So as we layer on this emotional side, on really what I would consider empathy, compassion, to help support our teams, how are you, like, what's the guidance you're giving, right, to leaders as we're helping others feel purposeful and connected?
So the 3 questions that I asked: how do you make a difference? How do you do it differently? And on your best day, what do you love about your job? You as leaders need to be answering that question for your company, and you need to be asking your people that question. So you've got these 2 lanes, belonging and significance. Belonging comes like that movie Hidden Figures, when Kevin Costner stands up there. These people are being treated like crap, but we're putting a man on the moon. We're all in. They have terrible working conditions.
Yes.
The poor woman has to use the bathroom a mile away, but she's still in on it. So number 1, and I'm not suggesting we go back to that. Move that to language. Here's how this company makes a difference. Here's the impact we have on real live human beings. That's the leader's job. Then you need to hold space for the individual to say, how does your work matter? Because the belonging comes from the leader giving voice to how the business makes a difference. The significance comes from the individual being able to lean in and say, here's how my work matters. And then you need to spend, I'm super specific about this, 50% of your time when you're talking focused on that lane. Here's how we're making a difference. Can we have more examples? How can we do it better? More on that. In the parlance of daily language. It's like if we're a family that decides we're going to love and support each other, the more we talk about how well are we loving each other now? How are we supporting each other? That's going to amplify that, and that's going to become our ethos.
Yes.
The numbers are a lagging indicator. The numbers are the result of how big a difference you've made to your customers. The data could not be more clear.
That was so good, Lisa. Truly. People's feedback too, just like, great session. Had a job will catch somebody's, wants to see the recording. Great POV. So just amazing, Lisa. You have such a wealth of knowledge from your experience. I hope that everybody checks out her profile, looks at her books. And you
can
have
follow me on
LinkedIn
LinkedIn, and we do a Work on Purpose newsletter. So just follow me, sign up for that. You'll get it every week, 100% free.
100% free. And you do your own LinkedIn lives.
I have one that's going to start in a half an hour.
There you go. So she's like, stop talking, Rachel. I got to reset. But really, you're incredible. Thank you. I personally learned a lot today. The audience learned a ton today. So thank you to everyone who's watching or watched the recording. Thanks for hanging out with me today. And Lisa, I'll be back first Friday in February with another amazing guest. So a few weeks. And just wish everybody a beautiful weekend. Thanks again.
Great to be